What's up YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I am ranking all of the V and VMAX cards from the new Pokemon TCG set Battle Styles in terms of their competitive viability in the standard format team up through Battle Styles, which will be the standard format roughly 2 weeks after Battle Styles comes out on March 19th. So this is pretty subjective, just a fun, casual, chill tier list video. I slapped all of the V and VMAX cards from Battle Styles into this here tier maker, and I also threw in Venusaur and Blastoise since those are coming out around the same time as Battle Styles, but in their own supplementary product. And shouts out to PokeGuardian for the scans of the cards, and we'll also be using PokeGuardian to read what the cards do and whatnot, because I don't expect everyone to know what all of the cards do, and you can't really zoom in on the cards here on tier maker. So something interesting, I'm not sure if I'll do this in the future, we'll see how it goes. I put the V Pokemon in here even if they have a VMAX, so like the Urshifu Vs and the Flapple V, stuff like that, because sometimes they can be viable on their own, or at least worth ranking, but it's interesting to see how many of the V Pokemon that have VMAXs are actually like decent cards on their own. So let me know what you think about that, adding in the Vs, or if I should just stick to ranking the VMAXs. Of course, shout out to PotownStore.com, the best place for you to get ptcgo codes. I have to pop the logo on up here, there we go. Be sure to use code Celio for 5% off. They should have Battle Styles in stock very soon, and you can get those and use the codes as early as March 18th on ptcgo. So we're starting out with Flapple V here. Let's take a look at Flapple V. Flapple V is a basic grass Pokemon, 190 HP. The only interesting thing about this card is Sour Spit. For a grass energy, it does 20, and then during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon's attacks cost +2 colorless more. So Sour Spit is pretty good. We're in a standard format where most competitive decks are playing 4 Switch, and Escape Rope comes out in this set, which means that they could be playing 4 Switch plus X amount of Escape Ropes, and that just removes the effect of Sour Spit. So I do think this card is above being bulk, so we'll put it in fringe for the Sour Spit. And then next we've got Flapple V-Max. G-Max rolling is just not very good. 320 HP, solid amount of HP, but G-Max rolling does 250 for 3 energy, which sounds great, but it does 10 less damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon, which is not good. That means you have to be using this in a Cheryl deck, or you have to be playing Cheryls in your Flapple V-Max deck. And you have to hit that Cheryl every time you get hit, or you're doing like a low amount of damage. Like if you get hit by Eternatus, you're doing 0 damage next turn. So this is going to be a bulk card for me. I think that the effect of that attack, the drawback, is just way too bad. Next is Victini V. So Victini V, we have a Victini V from Sword and Shield base set, which is actually very, very good. This one, not so much. So that's the same HP, 190. Has 2 attacks. The first one is a V Bullet for 1 fire. It does 10 plus 50 more if the defending is a V Pokemon. That includes VMAX, so you do 60 for 1 fire energy. That's really nothing to be excited about. And then Flare Shot, 120, discard all energy from this Pokemon. That's decent. It knocks out a Zacian. So we'll give this. See, I don't want to put it in decent just because it has a VMAX counterpart that's good, and that's exactly what I was talking about. Let me know what you guys think about ranking these Vs and VMAXs. But if I was ranking this Victini V independently of the VMAX, I would probably put it in fringe, because sometimes maybe there's matchups where you want that early 60 poke, but typically you're going to be playing the other Victini V over this one. And next we have Victini VMAX. 310 HP, Spreading Flames for a colorless. Attach up to 3 fire energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like. So it has the same exact attack as the Sword and Shield base set Victini V. And then Max Victory, if the defending's a V, it does 120 more damage. So for a fire and a colorless, it does 220 damage, which I think is very good. So this could be played a lot of ways. It could be played with Ninetales from Team Up, so you have gust effects. It could be played with Welder and other fire attackers. It could be played with Heat Fire Energy to buff it up. You could play it with Cheryl, so you max Victory, take a hit, you Cheryl it, then you switch into a different Victini, or you even Cheryl then Spreading Flames to power up multiple Pokemon at the same time. So I think Victini V-Max is very, very good. I don't think it's the absolute top of the selection, but I think it's very good. Next we have Empoleon V. I love Empoleon V. I love Empoleon as a Pokemon in general. I've talked about this so much on the channel that Emperor's Eyes is just so close to being like the ability we needed in the game. So Empoleon V, Water Pokemon Basic, has the Rapid Strike emblem. This is the first card we're looking at that's Rapid or Single Strike. And it has the ability Emperor's Eyes. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's basic Pokemon have no abilities, except for Pokemon with a rule box. So it shuts off things like Jirachi, Amazing Rare Jirachi, the new Celebi, and Manaphy from Shining Fates. And then it has Swirling Slice 130. It deals, it deals 130 for a water and 2 colorless, and then you move an energy from Empoleon to one of your benched Pokemon, and that's a really, really good effect because of Rapid Strike energy. So this just takes a Rapid Strike and a single energy attachment to do 130, and then you move that. You can move a Rapid Strike energy from Empoleon to your benched Pokemon, so to another Empoleon, to an Urshifu, even to some of the Rapid Strike Pokemon we're getting in the future sets that are really good and I think pair well with Empoleon V. So Swirling Slice is a great attack that doesn't look like much on the surface, but when you think about the Rapid Strike Pokemon and the Rapid Strike energy, I think it gets a lot better when you take that into account. And then Emperor's Eyes is decent, but it's not insane at all. So I think Empoleon V goes in the should be good category with Victini V-Max as well. I think on the surface, like if we didn't have Rapid Strike support, we didn't have Urshifu, we didn't have Rapid Strike energy, we didn't have other stuff coming out in the future sets, I think this would probably be much lower, but because of Rapid Strike energy, because of Urshifu and the Rapid Strike Tower and so many things, I think Empoleon V is just very good. Next we have Tapu Koko V. So Tapu Koko V, Lightning type basic, has 2 attacks. The first Electro Ball swings 40 for a lightning energy, and then Spiral Thunder for lightning colorless does 20 plus 40 for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. So I've talked about this before. I think this card is good versus Pikarom in the mirror. Could be good against fire decks as well because they put a lot of energy like on their Centiskorch or something like that. But it is very dependent on what your opponent's doing, and your opponent can play around it if they see it on your board or they see it in your list. So I'm going to put this as decent. I'm not confident enough to put it up further. Next is Tapu Koko V-Max, which evolves from that Tapu Koko V, and also keep in mind that we have another Tapu Koko V from Sword and Shield base set that swings 200 for 3 energy, and it has free retreat. This Tapu Koko V-Max has 320 HP, lightning type, and has 1 attack called Max Shock. For lightning colorless, it does 180, and if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, their active Pokemon is now paralyzed. So this is like guaranteed paralyzed as long as you're losing pretty much. So that's really, really strong. 180 is 2-shotting everything. It's 1-shotting support Pokemon if you need to, but I do think this card is solid and we'll see play eventually. It's coming out in the same set as the Urshifus and it's weak to fighting, so that's unfortunate for it, but I do think it will see play eventually. We're going to toss it into the decent tier. Next we have Mimikyu V, which is a very cool Pokemon. Again, Mimikyu in general is a cool Pokemon, but this is a very cool card. Very cool Mimikyu card. 160 HP, which is definitely very low. And the ability Dummy Doll, I love how they fit Mimikyu's video game ability into the card game with this. So it reads, when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may prevent all damage done to this Mimikyu V by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon until the end of your opponent's next turn. This ability really made me happy because it reminds me of like a design that I would have seen back in the Diamond and Pearl days of the game. And it's because it's not very simple. Like, this is something that could confuse a newer player, you know? Like, so I'm happy to see them reaching out with these kinds of abilities. So basically you play this down to your bench, and next turn prevent all damage done to Mimikyu V. So whether Mimikyu's on the bench, you prevent that damage, or if it's in the active, you prevent that damage. And just for a single psychic energy, put 3 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon for each prize card your opponent has taken. I think if you could spread that damage however you like, this might be a little better than I think I'm going to rank it, but it's still pretty good. I think this is a great option for Dragapult decks, because you could just slap it down and attach 1 energy, whereas with the Cosmic Eclipse Blacephalon, it needed 2 energy, and that was an issue. So this one only needs 1, and I think it's a very, very awesome card. But in terms of competitive playability in standard format team up through battle styles, I'm going to put it as Fringe. Next we have Necrozma V. So 220 HP, which is pretty good for a basic V Pokemon. Psychic type. It has Prismatic Ray, 20, and 20 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. That's honestly a pretty good first attack. This could be pretty good in Dragapult. I mean, if you have like a wide lens, a telescopic sight on this thing, that does 20 active and then 50 to 2 of your opponent's benched V or GX Pokemon. And if it has a horror energy and your opponent hits into it, it gets hit back for 2 damage counters. So like, I actually think this card is a little underrated for the first attack if Dragapult ends up being good. And then Special Laser for Psychic Colorless does 100 plus 120 more if it has any special energy attached to it. So that second attack does 120 for 3 with a stipulation, and a 220 for 3 with a stipulation, and like that's just worse than Zacian V. So like it just kind of looks like worse Zacian V off the bat, but it does have that first attack Prismatic Ray, which I'm very intrigued by. I'm gonna put it in Fringe, but I think this and Mimikyu both have the potential to move up to like decent-ish tier. So, but we're gonna put that in Fringe because like I'm not sure that they will see play. These cards that I'm putting in decent, they're gonna see play, and they're decent cards. Next we have the Single Strike Urshifu line. So Single Strike Urshifu V, 220 HP basic fighting Pokemon. It has the first attack Laser Focus. Search your deck for up to 2 fighting energy cards and attach them to this Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. And then Impact Blow for Fighting Colorless does 180, and during your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Impact Blow. So this card, because of Laser Focus, this might, like, let's say this was released in Sword and Shield base, or like Regirock V. Let's say this is what Regirock V had, this lineup and this HP. I actually think it would have been played, so I'm going to put it in decent. Like, I think that's actually a solid card on its own without Urshifu V-Max in mind. Now let's look at Single Strike Urshifu V-Max. 330 HP fighting type V-Max. It has 2 attacks, Beatdown, doing 100 damage for 3, and of course extra damage if you have Single Strike energy attached. And then G-Max 1 Blow for Fighting Colorless. It does 270 damage. Discard all energy from this Pokemon, and this attack's damage is not affected by effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So it goes through everything. You get buffs for Single Strike energy, so you do 310 with 2 energy, with 2 Single Strikes on. And then next turn after you get hit, you can use the Single Strike Scroll of Scorn to add an attack to your Single Strike Urshifu V-Max. You get Furious Anger for just a fighting energy. It does 10 plus 10 for each damage counter on your Pokemon. So I think this card is very good. I think Scroll of Scorn and Single Strike Energy and Houndoom, you know, all of the support coming out makes this card possible. This isn't a card that opens up opportunities for other things, more as it's a card that has opportunities opened for it by the other cards surrounding it. So I'm putting this in should be good, which is basically the B tier. I don't think it's incredible, and I do think it's being carried by all the cards surrounding it. Rapid Strike Urshifu is next. So Rapid Strike Urshifu V, 220 HP, Strafe does 30, then you switch, and Hunter's Furious Blow 150. This is just like, without Urshifu V-Max, that's just a bulk card. Like that, there's no reason to play that. But Urshifu V-Max, very good card. 330 HP, Rapid Strike emblem, fighting type, has 2 attacks. The first one is Gale Thrust for fighting energy. It does 30 plus 120 if this Pokemon moved from your bench to the active this turn, so that does 150 damage. And then G-Max Rapid Flow. I was going to say Gale Thrust Rapid Flow, just combine all the attacks into one. Fighting colorless, discard all energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 120 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. So dump your energy, which could just be 2 energy attachments because Rapid Strike energy do 120 to 2 things. You could do Gale Thrust to 2 things, so 150, 150, and then clean those up with G-Max Rapid Flow. Now this is the kind of card that opens up possibilities outside of the card, basically, because like, whereas Single Strike VMAX, the Single Strike Urshifu, that deck is going to have to be built all around just making Single Strike Urshifu work. Whereas Urshifu VMAX Rapid Strike really opens up the possibilities. If you saw my every deck coming from Battle Styles video, you'll see there are a lot of Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX variants and pretty much just one Single Strike Urshifu VMAX variant. Gale Thrust is insane. It swings 150 for 1 fighting, and it's fighting type, so that's one-shotting Pikarom, Raichu, Bolt Tund, doing 300 damage to Eternatus. G-Max Rapid Flow, if you bring up a Dedenne or a Crobat or a Pikarom or a Bolt Tund to the active, it one-shots that and does 120 somewhere else. So fighting type gives this Pokemon a lot, but this card is actually just insane regardless of its typing. And Rapid Strike energy does have a lot to do with that. But this card is very, very good, and I expect it to be the center, or at the center of the meta once it comes out. So we're putting this up at the top. I think this card is just insane. Next, what do we have? We have Tyranitar V. Tyranitar V, 230 HP Dark type Pokemon, Single Strike emblem. Cragalanche does 60 and discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. And Single Strike Crush does 240, discard the top 4 cards of your deck. So Single Strike Crush could be a very aggro attack if you base your deck around it because of the Houndooms that accelerate Single Strike energy. So if you get 2 Single Strike energies on this from Houndooms, you're doing 280, like turn 2. That could be very strong versus tag team decks or V-based decks. Probably not as strong versus V-Max decks. But I do think it has some potential. So we're probably going to put this in Fringe. I'm not confident enough to call it decent, but we're going to call it Fringe. Let's see. Next we have Venusaur VMAX. 330 HP Grass type V-Max card. The main attack here is Forest Storm for colorless. It does 30 damage times the grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Now what's important is it doesn't have to be attached to Venusaur. So you can put 2 energy on Venusaur but have a bunch of energy spread everywhere else. Venusaur gets hit, you use Cheryl, reattach the energy to Venusaur with Rillaboom, and then swing again with Forest Storm. So I think that's where the viability comes in, that it's grass energy attached to all of your Pokemon. Cheryl can pair with it. You have Turffield Stadium, Rillaboom, Eggroll, the Leaveney that reduces damage. You have a fair amount of stuff that goes with it, and then even colorless attackers like Cramorant V and Double V. So Venusaur VMAX does have some viability, but I'm not sure if it's better than Rillaboom VMAX, and Rillaboom VMAX doesn't even see play right now. So I don't think it's complete bulk. We're going to toss it into Fringe. Blastoise VMAX, 330 HP, Water type. Has 2 attacks, Grand Falls for water. It does 120. Search your deck for up to 3 water energy, attach them to your benched Pokemon. And then G-Max Bombard, water, 220 damage, and then it does 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. It's okay. I want it to be better than it is, I think. And the way weakness works these days, it kind of stinks that this card will just like auto lose to a lightning deck, even if the strategies of each of the decks don't beat each other. Like, even if the lightning deck strategy shouldn't beat Blastoise without weakness, it's just like going to turn it into a horrible matchup because of that. And there's no good way to really play around weakness for most decks because of weakness guard energy not really working with a deck like Blastoise V-Max, where all the attacks cost water. But I also don't want to count cards out just because of their lightning weakness. So let's say this card has no weakness. What would I think about it then? I'm posing a very interesting question to myself. So you do 120 and power up your stuff, and then G-Max Bombard's going to clean up whatever you hit with Grand Falls, but it's also going to hit 2 other things for damage. And Grand Falls set up your next Blastoise V-Max, so you have another one already ready to go. G-Max Bombard next turn, 220, 60, putting 2 things up to 60 now. If you're playing Telescopic Sight, that could be kind of crazy. I mean, we'll probably just toss the card in Fringe, because obviously if I'm talking about it this much, I don't think it's complete bulk like Flapple V-Max, which is just absolutely horrendous, or the single strike, the Rapid Strike Urshifu, which would never be played without the Rapid Strike V-Max. So I don't think it's complete garbage, but it's also going to take a little bit more to make it work than some other cards due to its weakness, and I think Venusaur also suffers from the fire weakness as well. Next we have Corbinite V and VMAX. So the Corbinite V, never going to use this without the VMAX. 210 metal type Pokemon. It does clutch for 30 and then they can't retreat. And Sky Hurricane does 190 for 3 energy. No reason to ever use this without the VMAX, so we're just going to toss that into bulk. Corbinite VMAX, however, 320 HP metal. It has the ability Lustrous Body, prevent all effects on your opponent's abilities done to this Pokemon, and then G-Max Hurricane does 240 and can't attack next turn, but it has free retreat, which is super nice. I honestly think I'm going to toss this into instant meta. I think this card is going to be an instant meta card, paired with Bronzong and Cheryl and Zacian and Metal Saucer, maybe Luke Metal, maybe Zamazenta, but I do think this card, because of its support, I will say individually this card is not better than these other cards you see down here, but taking into account the support it has, I do think it's above these other cards. Next is Stoutland V. Double Dip Fangs does 40, and if the opponent's basic Pokemon is knocked out by damage from this attack, it takes 1 more prize card. We're gonna just toss this in Fringe. It's not complete bulk, but tossing 3 energy onto this thing to get an extra prize card of a situational circumstance, I'm not sure if that's ever going to be worth putting into a deck. And then Kricketune V, last but not least, has the ability Exciting Stage. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 cards in your hand. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may draw cards until you have 4 cards in your hand instead. So I love that this has some versatility to it. It's not just a straightforward ability. It gets better if it's in the active, and we're going to put this up here in the tier 2, tier B, whatever you want to call it. So that's all of the V's and VMAXs from Battle Styles, ranked according to their standard format viability and playability, in my opinion. Let me know what you think about how I did the V's and VMAXs. Like Rapid Strike V Urshifu, absolutely terrible card on its own, but Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, probably the best card in the set, or at least the best Pokemon VMAX in the set. Again, Corbinite V, I think that's pretty funny. The 2 best VMAXs, I have their Vs down in garbage tier. So let me know what you think about this whole rating system, and if you like that I put in these V, or should I just leave out the Vs that have VMAX counterparts next time? So let me know about that, and I'll leave a link to this tier maker either in the description or in the comments, so you can make this own tier list yourself if you want to. Share it on Twitter, share it wherever you want. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out PotownStore.com, the best place to get ptcgo codes, and use code CELIO for 5% off. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already for daily Pokemon TCG content, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.